Hey there. So, immune for, huh? Want to see if it really does what it says, right?
Yeah.
Supplements can be kind of a wild world. We've got your notes and all that marketing stuff. Ready to really take a look and see what's going on? They're calling immune for this like ultimate immune boost, all in one easy vegetarian capsule. Sounds pretty good so far, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does. And it sounds like you've already done some homework here. You even found an article about it maybe interacting with certain medications. We should definitely circle back to that later. But
Yeah.
first, I think, let's break down what Immune 4 is actually claiming. What are they promising?
Okay, so let's unpack it all. They're talking a lot about strengthening natural defenses. And vitamin C and zinc seem to be their big stars.
Yeah.
You highlighted a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association about vitamin C in the common cold. Did that one stand out to you for a reason?
It did, yeah. That study gets mentioned a lot because it looked at a pretty specific group of people, marathon runners, people who are really pushing their bodies. And they found that taking vitamin C regularly did seem to make them less likely to catch a cold. But it was only in that group, the high stress group. So it seems like vitamin C might give your immune system an extra boost when it's already working really hard.
So maybe not something everyone needs every single day, but something to think about during flu season. Or if you're just feeling run down, what about zinc then? I mean, we already know antioxidants are good, but Immune 4 is saying that zinc's role in, developing and activating those immune cells is even more important. Does your research back that up?
It's interesting, Paul, because yes, zinc is definitely key for a healthy immune system, but some of the studies you found suggest that the amount of zinc really matters. Like in some cases, too much zinc can actually do the opposite. It can suppress your immune response.
Wow, really?
Hmm.
I had no idea. So just loading up on zinc lozenges might not be the best idea then. Immune4 does list how much zinc is in each serving. So that's something we can look at compared to the studies later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up a good point. It's all about context, right? What works for one person might not work for another, and the dosage is a huge part of that.
Right. Makes sense. So speaking of different needs, you mentioned you were especially interested in Immune4's anti-inflammatory properties. Let's see if they can back up those claims. They really emphasize echinacea and elderberry extract for this. What's the story there?
Okay, well, echinacea is a tricky one. You said you tried it yourself
Yeah.
and didn't really notice anything, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty common. The studies you found show mixed results, probably because there are different kinds of echinacea out there, and the quality can be all over the place. Some research suggests that certain types of echinacea might help reduce cold symptoms, but we definitely need more research on that.
Okay, so maybe not a guaranteed win for echinacea. What about elderberry then? I mean, it seems like it's everywhere these days. But I always get a little suspicious of trendy ingredients like that.
Elderberry is interesting. It's been used for centuries in traditional medicine, but the scientific evidence, it's still kind of coming together. Some studies show that elderberry can shorten colds and flu, and maybe even make the symptoms less severe. It might be blocking the virus from replicating, actually. But you also found a study that didn't see any real effect on cold symptoms.
So more of a maybe than a for sure with elderberry. It sounds like with both of these ingredients, the dosage and the specific type are really important. We're going to have to look closer at those studies.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Immune 4. You highlighted a concern about the amount of elderberry they're using. Let's see what the research says about the best dosage and if Immune 4 measures up.
Yeah, let's do that. We should also compare Immune Forward to some of those other supplements you found. Look at the ingredients, the dosages, and the price.
Sounds good to me. And before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we should absolutely talk about that article you found about Immune 4 possibly messing with some medications. It's really important to look at the whole picture before you add any new supplement to your routine.
Absolutely. Safety first. We'll dig into all of that in the next part of our deep dive into Immune 4. Stay tuned.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Immune 4. Before we start comparing dosages and all that, and look at those potential interactions, you flag something interesting in the Immune 4 marketing, this whole idea of a synergistic blend.
Oh, right. They're really pushing that, aren't they? Like these four ingredients work better together than they would on their own.
Yeah.
But looking at all the research you've gathered, I'm not seeing a lot of studies specifically about this combination.
Yeah, that's the thing with supplement research, It tends to focus on individual ingredients rather than specific blends,
Yeah.
which makes it hard to really evaluate these synergy claims.
So how do we even begin to figure this out? Are there any hints about how these ingredients might interact?
Well, we can look for clues. For example, you pointed out a study where vitamin C actually seemed to help the body absorb more zinc, So that suggests there could be some positive interaction there.
Okay, so maybe some evidence of them working together there. But what about echinacea and elderberry? I didn't see anything in the research about how they interact with each other. Or with vitamin C and zinc, for that matter.
You're right. There's not much research on those combinations, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. Immune 4 is making this synergy claim, but the scientific evidence to back it up is pretty thin.
It's like they're saying this is a perfectly coordinated team, but we don't even know if they've ever played together.
Exactly. It's a good reminder to be a little skeptical about those marketing claims and really look for the science to back it up. Now, you are particularly concerned about the elderberry dosage in Immune 4, right? You found studies suggesting there's a certain range for it to be effective, and Immune 4 seemed to be using less than that.
Yeah, exactly. The amount they're using is lower than what some studies use to show positive effects. Does that mean it won't work at all?
Not necessarily. It's possible they chose a lower dose for a reason. Maybe to reduce the risk of side effects, or to avoid those interactions we talked about. But without more information from the manufacturer, it's hard to say for sure what their thinking was.
Speaking of information, you flagged that concern about potential interactions with medications, especially that article that mentioned Immune 4 could interfere with certain immunosuppressants.
Right, that's a really important point. It really underlines why it's so crucial to talk to your doctor before starting any new supplement, especially if you're already taking medication. It's good that Immune 4 has a disclaimer on their website about talking to a healthcare professional.
Yeah, but even with that disclaimer, it's a little worrying that they don't specifically mention the types of medications that could be a problem.
I agree. Transparency is so important, and they could definitely be clearer about those potential interactions. It's also important to remember that even though these are natural ingredients, they can still have strong effects, so it's not something to take lightly.
So even though Immune 4 might seem like a harmless way to give your immune system a boost, it's important to be careful, do your research, and definitely talk to your doctor.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to comparing Immune 4 with other supplements, you had a question about their manufacturing process, right? You highlighted their good manufacturing practices claim, but you also mentioned they don't seem to have any third-party testing.
Yeah, that's right. They talk about these high standards. But I didn't see anything about independent verification.
It does make me a little hesitant, I have to say. GMP certification is a good starting point, but it's basically self-regulated by the industry. Third-party testing, on the other hand, provides an extra layer of, well, independent checks and balances. It verifies that the product actually contains what it says it does, and that it's free from contaminants.
So it's like they're saying, trust us, we're doing things right, but they're not really giving us any proof.
Exactly. As a consumer, you have every right to want that extra reassurance.
Okay, so Immune 4 gets some points for the GMP certification, but loses some for not being transparent about potential interactions and for not having that third-party testing. So how about the ingredients and dosage? How does Immune 4 actually stack up against other immune support supplements?
Well, let's take a look at what you found. You've got information on a bunch of other supplements, right? Their ingredients, dosages, and prices. We can compare Immune 4 to those, see how it measures up.
Perfect. Let's see how Immune 4 fares against the competition. Does it stand out or blend in? We'll dive into all of that in the final part of our deep dive into Immune 4. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So we've really gotten to know Immune 4, haven't we? All the ingredients, the claims, and yeah, even the potential downsides. But now the big question, the one we all want answered, how does it actually compare to other immune support supplements out there? You've been looking into some alternatives, right? I'm really curious to see what you found.
Well, you've got a really interesting mix in your notes here, different approaches, Some focus on just one ingredient, like high-dose vitamin D. Others are these complex blends, kind of like Immune 4.
Okay, so a little bit of everything then. Let's start with those single ingredient ones. You mentioned a study about vitamin D and how it helps regulate the immune system. That seems to be getting a lot of buzz lately.
Yeah, it is. Vitamin D is crucial for your immune system to function properly. And a lot of people don't get enough, especially during the winter. So those high-dose vitamin D supplements you were looking at, they could be a good option, especially if you're not getting enough from sunlight or your diet.
I remember reading somewhere that too much vitamin D can be bad for you. Did you find anything about potential risks or like how much is too much?
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely upper limits for vitamin D supplementation. If you're going to take those high-dose supplements, you really should be working with a doctor. They can check your levels and make sure you're staying within a safe range.
Got it. So not something to just experiment with on your own then. So what about those complex blends like Immune 4? You've got a few examples here in your notes, some with even more ingredients than Immune 4, actually.
Right. There's one you highlighted that adds probiotics and mushrooms on top of the vitamins and herbs. They call it a holistic immune support formula.
Holistic sounds fancy, but does it actually work better? Is it really better to throw in everything but the kitchen sink?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. There just isn't enough research on these complex blends yet. Some people might find that this broader approach works well for them, while others might do better focusing on specific needs, maybe with individual supplements.
So it's kind of personal then. Maybe a bit of trial and error to see what your body responds to best.
Exactly. Which brings us back to Immune 4. How does its formula and dosage stack up against these other options you found?
Well, looking at my notes here, Immune 4 seems to be somewhere in the middle, wouldn't you say? It's not as simple as those single ingredient supplements, but it's not as packed as some of those holistic blends either.
And remember, we talked about how Immune 4 uses less elderberry than what some studies found to be effective. Some of these other blends actually have higher doses of elderberry, and some include extra ingredients. That might help the elderberry work better.
So Immune 4 might not be the most powerful option for elderberry then. What about the other ingredients though? Vitamin C, zinc, and echinacea. How do those compare?
Well, the amounts of vitamin C and zinc in Immune 4 seem to be pretty typical for these kinds of supplements. But remember that study about zinc we talked about? Too much can actually backfire. Immune 4 isn't using a crazy high dose or anything, but it's still something to think about. Consider your overall diet and what your body needs.
Makes sense. And what about the echinacea? We talked about how the research is kind of all over the place and that the type and quality really matter. Did you find any info about the specific kind of echinacea in Immune 4?
I didn't know. They don't say what type they use or where they get it from, which makes it hard to really judge how effective it might be. Some of the other supplements you're looking at are much more transparent about that kind of stuff. They'll list the specific species and how they extract it.
Okay, so minus some points for Immune 4 for not being clear about that. What about price, though? Is Immune 4 a good deal compared to these other options?
Price is always important, right? Especially if you're thinking about taking something long-term. Immune 4 seems to be priced pretty competitively, especially compared to some of those specialized blends. You know, the ones with higher doses or extra ingredients.
So it might not be the strongest or the most transparent option, but at least it's not going to break the bank. I guess the real question after all this research is, do you think Immune 4 is worth trying?
Honestly, that's a decision you have to make for yourself. We've gone through all the ingredients, the research, the possible benefits, and the downsides. You've done a fantastic job comparing it to other options.
And we can't forget about that article you found about potential interactions. It's a good reminder to always talk to your doctor before starting any new supplement, even something that seems as safe as Immune 4.
Exactly. You've got all the info now, so you can make a smart decision. Think about your own needs and preferences and what your health goals are.
Right. And at the end of the day, supplements are just one part of the bigger picture, aren't they?
Yeah.
A healthy lifestyle is the foundation of a strong immune system.
Couldn't agree more. Eating healthy foods, getting enough exercise, quality sleep, managing stress, those are the real superheroes.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Immune 4. It's been really eye-opening, hasn't it? Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to your health, and we're always here to help you figure it all out.
Until next time, stay curious and stay well.